Art Index is made possible through the generous contributions of the Richard J. Massey Foundation for Art and Science, and the support of the law offices of Matt Greenbaum and Dorian Bennett Sotheby's International Realty.
Art Index TV's mission is to take you inside the complexity of today's art world, from artist to art, dealer to museum, and educator to administrator. We also examine the business side of the visual arts, which supports local and national economies and is a vital part of our society. Today's show features artist and founder of Pierogi Gallery, Joe Amrine, curator and arts administrator for Creative Capital, Sean Elwood, curator for the Museum of Art and Design, Lowry Stokes Sims, and conceptual artist, Mel Chen. This episode also features video works by artists Michael Greathouse, Martha Rossler, and Marina Zerkow. Joe Amrine is the founder of Pierogi, an artist-run gallery in Brooklyn, New York. Founded in Williamsburg in the 90s, the Pierogi Gallery helped put Brooklyn on the art world's map. Amrine's own art has been exhibited across the United States and abroad. How are you doing today, Joe?
Doing great. Thanks for getting me in here.
Sure, sure. How would you define art, or contemporary art more specifically?
Boy, that's a broad question.
It really is, yeah.
Well, contemporary art is dealing with living artists, of course, and working with contemporary issues, and especially a lot of new media today, using different technologies and interdisciplinary kind of projects that people are putting together and group projects. So I think contemporary art is really a new sort of possibility for viewing and developing ideas. And what I can do as a gallerist in presenting artists' works is having access to this work for the public and having dialogue with the artists and helping develop their ideas. But I can't often give them the kind of funding that they need. So we do rely on a lot of situations. A lot of artists are still, what we have at the gallery that's unique is the flat files. And it's a lot of work on paper. I mean, collage, photography, conceptual, figurative, all kinds of work. It's a very eclectic group of work. I'm an artist myself, and I have a lot of empathy for the situation, for being an artist. And living in New York, you do have, there's a lot of artists that live in the city, and it's hard to really find people that will look at your work. So I do like to keep that open to, for artists and give them a chance and give them a voice. And the files aren't a way of representation, but it's more about access. And again, getting back to that, access is just, you have access to curators and collectors and new collectors, and it's a whole world out there, and it's just giving them a voice.
Mm-hmm. Do you find it difficult to promote contemporary art?
Well, promoting the work, it's difficult because it's, when I work with a lot of younger artists, it's difficult.
Sure.
Contemporary art is not hard to promote because it's very inventive and people love that sort of context, and I don't find it very difficult at all to promote it. It's just, again, being a gallerist, I almost live vicariously through that context, and it's a great lifestyle. So for me, my enthusiasm of it is a way of promoting it.
Mm-hmm. What is the best advice you've received as both an artist and as a dealer?
Boy, advice. Well, you can't be discouraged. I mean, it's hard today too, being just surviving, trying to develop your career and keep that going. But you just have to have your inner sort of faith about your direction and keep a dialogue going. That's the biggest context, is keep a dialogue and be involved and be proactive. Don't rely on the system. You don't have to rely on the white box. You can
DIY.
Yeah, do it yourself, and that's sort of how I got into it. And it's helpful. And it's always wonderful too, going to these cultural convenience contexts of museums and institutions and participating in that.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Lowry Stokes Sims is a curator at the Museum of Arts and Design in New York City and the president of Art Table, an organization of women professionals in the art world. She is known for her expertise in African, Latino, Native, and Asian American artists. What changes have you seen in the art world?
Well, I think the most exciting and significant thing over the last 37 years I've been in the art world is really how it's opened up in terms of recognizing the contributions of a larger group of people. I mean, you can't underestimate the effects of movements towards diversity, multiculturalism, however bad or worse it is, however they've sort of really infected the critical discourse and, you know, the arcane language of it. The fact is that there's a much greater presence of artists of color and women in the art world than there was when I started in the early 70s. And you cannot dismiss that importance in terms of allowing a young person to sort of see their peers and examples that they too can be part of this world and making it accessible to them.
How would you define art?
Oh, that's interesting. I used to have a book that defined art as a visual experience. And I guess for me, I would define art as a way of communicating through ideas and objects. And, you know, and that gives us a wide breadth so that if you wanted to be more conceptual, you could be conceptual. If you wanted to be a potter, you could.
How would you define contemporary art?
Well, you know, the words modern and contemporary, you know, like are really kind of interesting. I mean, you know, when does modernism start, for example? I mean, you know, Robert Rosenblum said it started with the Industrial Revolution, so you could start the mid-18th century. Somebody else would sort of say it started at the moment when artists were really moving away from sort of photorealistic, you know, kinds of depictions. And so you could start with the Impressionists and the Post-Impressionists. And then some people would cap modernism, say, with the immediate post-World War II era, say in the 1950s, and sort of say contemporary comes in with pop art and minimalism in the 60s. But if you use contemporary, I guess you're sort of really talking about art that's being done just at this moment.
If you could bend the ear of someone in Washington and inform them of some aspect of the art world, what would you say to them that might influence change?
I think I would really encourage them to actualize a lot of the ideas that have been put forth over the last 30, 40 years about the very practical and functional role of art in society on a day-to-day basis. There's reams of evidence about, you know, learning, how visual arts help with learning, everything from science to mathematics. But I think also that there is a way in which we can sort of create a new sort of economy in distressed, you know, communities. I mean, everybody's talking about joblessness now. And the fascinating thing is that I talk to people who have grandsons who are going to Stanford, couldn't get summer jobs, but they sort of, you know, teamed up with their girlfriends and started, you know, beading necklaces and made like tons of money. There's an appetite out there for the handmade object. And we're not really sort of realizing this on a civic level and on a kind of job employment type of level.
Do you have a piece of advice that you could impart to others?
To pursue their passion in life, no matter what anybody says, despite parental and societal calls for practicality and functionality. And along the way, if you choose to do that, to make sure that you have a cohort, a posse, who will support you and who shares your values so that you, as you move through life, you always can rely on them for support.
How about the worst? What's the worst advice you've given to someone?
I never give bad advice.
Michael Greathouse is an experimental filmmaker. Using computer animation, his recent series of black and white shorts depict scenarios informed by film noir and campy Hollywood horror films. Mel Chen is a conceptual artist who has received numerous grants, awards, and public commissions throughout his career. Chen's work challenges the function of public art by conveying social awareness. What were the formative influences for you as an artist?
Well, I think I always think of it as not one thing, but multiple kind of conditions that are laid upon, mostly psychological, sometimes physiological, that happen. And what has made me the type of artist I am is probably more about disruption and mutation as opposed to some linear kind of progression.
So like social chaos?
Social and internal, because there can be psychological issues that come in one's life. I mean, all of us have trauma, but certain traumas shock you into getting away from your personal delusions, I think, that are accrued by this mantle of being an artist. In fact, I still am a bit uncomfortable because I don't see this term as the way I'm defining it, as a catalytic structure, as having one point where it actually becomes. It's also almost how Derrida used to talk about justice. It's something that you automatically have to understand that it will never be attained, and you must constantly strive toward that direction.
How would you define contemporary art?
I've done it a lot of ways. I'll give you another variation. I've defined, at a boys' symposium, I defined it as meat product, you know? And you know, and compared to, we're in television, so it's like television. I don't have time for this, but it's really a quick thing. I kind of ask people what is like GMC, and most people think General Motors Corporation, but essentially it's gallery, museums, collectors. Oh. Now that's a tripartite structure, you know, a little Steiner-ish.
Okay.
You know? And yeah, if you look at that's just this loop, and you have all these people outside that, about 1 million something people, all these artists around it wanting to be, that are in the margins. And usually powerful structures define their power by creating margins and maintaining them. So here I'm lowly Mel trying to get in. But, and then I also say, well, let's talk about television. Then you have NPS, and that's not the National Park Service, that's actually network producer sponsors. Another huge, much bigger billion in number with all the little margins set aside wanting to come in. If we stop there, we have defined like two probably spheres of influence that don't normally meet. But no pun intended, by going into meat product, if you go since training as sculpture, you are able to extend this platter into tubular, hydraulic flows of protein and fat. And you start seeing this tubular salami and maybe one massive homogenized bologna, okay? And then you add fourth dimension, you add time. So
now, is the artist in that sandwich somewhere?
Yeah, we're all in the thing. And this is the thing, as we're flowing through, it's like, then you have history that slices the meat product, and you see this cross-section, say, oh my goodness, 50s abstract expressionism, 60s pop, 70s post-minimalism, conceptual, and you see this huge chunk of fat rising. It's Joseph Beuys, right? Anyway, what I'm describing is a hydraulic flow of ideas and extruded through this. And it's when you use the term art, why this long explanation is these slices tend to the way we can digest it. When in truth, it is a massive flow of concepts. And if you're lucky to be caught at the moment, you may be considered art.
In this video piece, artist Martha Rosler presents a short but incisive statement. A mechanical toy dressed as an American soldier plays God Bless America on a trumpet. The camera pans down, revealing the toy's camouflage-clad trouser leg has been rolled up to uncover a mechanism that looks uncannily like a prosthetic limb.
God bless America!
Sean Elwood is a director of special projects for Creative Capital, an initiative of the Andy Warhol Foundation. Elwood is on the board of several nonprofits and is a regular panelist on a number of selection committees. Today I'm interviewing Sean Elwood, the director of grants and services
for Creative Capital.
Go ahead, give us your title.
I'm the Director of Grants and Services for Creative Capital Foundation in New York.
I knew that. I knew that. Okay. What is the role? What is your role then?
I have the best job in the world. Years ago, Creative Capital was established. We're now 10 years old. It's sort of at that point where the federal government stopped funding individual artists. Oh. And there was a lot of talk about how artists were going to find support and what the next step would look like for artists. And finally, Arch Gillies, who at the time was the director of the Warhol Foundation, said, time for talk is done. We need to actually do something. Let's start an experimental organization sort of for 5 years and see how this would work. A different model of artist support. At the same time, there was...
What year was this?
The late 90s.
Late 90s.
Well, so 99 is when we actually was established. This was probably a couple of years before that. Mm-hmm. So they took that model and they said, well, what we'll do is try to apply that to visual artists, treating them sort of like small business owners, and then develop the notion that we'll give money as a startup and then stay committed to a project with the artist for a period of years. And during that time, we'll also give them professional development and hook them up with resources, build community around them of other artists, and see what kind of benefits and results we get. And so that's what they did. And in the early years, it was sort of hit or miss, and slowly but surely this system developed and refined itself. So my job is basically above and beyond going through a grant-making process where we give grants to these artists for these projects. I then, along with my colleague Kemi Olasemi, work with the artists to give them advice, act as a sounding board, hook them up with other resources and that sort of thing, and give them money, again, at different stages of a project's development.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
So you're the go-to guy
for
many artists.
It's terrific because I get to spend all day talking to artists on the phone and giving them money. So it's wonderful.
Oh. What kinds of changes have you seen in the art world?
Well, of course, the economic changes have hit everybody across the board. Also, and sort of related to that, there's a kind of perfect storm going on right now with a lot of the arts. We fund not only visual arts, but we fund performing arts, something called emerging fields, literature, and film video. And almost all of those disciplines have distribution systems that have existed for, in some cases, centuries, so that, or at least decades, where you have music and film and various kinds of art forms being distributed in a certain way. And now what you're seeing is, because of the development of the internet and because of digital technologies and the way the art gets made, you're seeing huge shifts in how this work gets distributed and out into the world. And a lot of those pre-existing models are actually breaking down. The internet has sort of torn its way through the music distribution system, through all sorts of print media are being distributed differently. And they're sort of at different stages. The different disciplines are seeing this evolving at different rates and at different stages, but almost all of the arts are being affected by it. So that's a huge difference, and we're like everyone else trying to figure out, well, if you're trying to help artists, you're trying to help a film video maker, and the old models of distribution aren't working, we have to be pretty fast on our feet trying to figure out how we can hook those artists up with new kinds of resources and advice so that they can try to find out what that new normal is going to be.
Well, thank you very much, Sean, for joining us. The next video piece is by artist Marina Zerkow. The animated carnivalesque tailgate party of Slurb loops and stutters like a vinyl record stuck in a groove. Slurb, a word that collapses slum and suburb, encapsulates a dreamy ode to the rise of slime, a watery future in which jellyfish have dominion. hope you have enjoyed this episode and that you will remain with us as we continue our exploration of contemporary art. Until next time, keep experiencing the art in your world, and thank you for watching Art Index TV.